What's up, gamers? We are back with some more modern action, and this time it's going to be some blue-white control, Azorius Miracles, Planeswalker control, whatever name that you want to call this deck, going to be up against the Omnath Elemental deck. 5-color Omnath. It's got the 4-color one as the pillar of it, but because it runs all 5 lands in here, 5-color lands, that I've just listed it as, 5-color Omnath. But we're going to see how things go. It's going to be very much a land go match between both of these decks because, Omnath is a landfall focused deck, so it cares about making land drops and kind of, setting yourself up for, getting all of your colors, being able to utilize all the other elementals, and just sort of kind of grinding things out and getting, superior advantage over your opponent. The other side of things, the Miracle list is kind of the slow, methodical, let's set up, build up, prepare ourselves for kind of the inevitable grind fest that will be the match. Now, the deck is a ton of fun to play. If you're thinking about switching things up and trying out a blue-white control list, Miracles is fun. Being able to do the reveal, hey, here's a Terminus off the top, it feels great. I have a MTGO, stream event coming up based on when you guys are watching this. It might have already happened or not. We'll see how things go. I still locked in my deck list. I keep playing all these different decks. I played a couple leagues with a Miracle list or a blue-white list, and I was having fun, but it's like, oh, the clock is a real thing on MTGO. It is a real thing on, in paper and tournaments and stuff like that. And we've seen many games go to time here on the channel, but there's something about every game action you have to click through and yes, cool, okay, awesome, yep, awesome, no problem, okay, right? Every single thing. Where this, I could just, do the stuff, right? Untapping, tapping, it doesn't feel like I'm wasting game time actions to do that. Also, the amount of time that you have for a best of 5 is different in a league. MTGO, you get your 30 minutes compared to the 50 minutes of paper. So it's you got to play a little bit faster. So I've been trying out the blue-white stuff, and now we see one of the powers of the blue-white is we're going to attempt to land a Teferi here, which we get a response. Yeah, it looks like there is the Fire and Ice going to get used here to tap down the remaining land, especially because of the fact that once Teferi hits the battlefield, you cannot cast things at instant speed. So we're going to utilize that, help us draw a card, set ourselves up. And Teferi will just get some uptick going on here. So yeah, so I'm still trying to decide what deck to play. I have had fun playing, the affinity list. There's going to be some gameplay stuff coming up in the near future of that. I think, I expect there to be some prowess decks playing in the event. I expect there to be some Boros energy playing in the event. I've thought about picking up and playing Murktide again. Murktide's just a sweet, fun deck to be able to play. We'll see. We'll see what I end up landing on. Of course, I am Mr. Infect, but have not played with a Infect list. I mean, I've been trying to brew together and put together a Golgari list that I want to put up for everyone to be able to watch soon. I have not yet, but namesake of the deck coming down, Omnath hitting the battlefield here. Of course, we get the trigger to draw a card, and then any subsequent land from then on out will help get us kind of the additional bonuses that we're looking for. Whether it's going to be things like, getting extra life, being able to, get extra mana, deal damage, depending on how many lands you're going to be hitting there. So, of course, for everyone that's watching that you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing because we do have gameplay coverage every Monday and Thursday, as well as the sprinkling of content on Saturday for kind of the bigger, longer form stuff. We've been putting up some Commander content on Saturdays. We're going to start doing some MTGO leagues for you to be able to enjoy on Saturdays. But if you want to look at the paper stuff, that's going to be every Monday and Thursday. And then we're going to get ourselves all set up as we plan to do other content on Saturdays as well, especially with events coming up. We keep talking about MTG Vegas. We know we're going to be going to Commander Sealed in the fall. Like, there's going to be other vlog-related content and other things that will be popping up for you to be able to experience on Saturdays. So, yeah, if you like the stuff, you know, subscribe. Let us know. Also, if you want to see specific deck lists, let us know. We'll try to post them up for you all. Most of the time, we put them up on Moxfield, but every so often, we get sucked into doing all the other stuff and forget to post the deck list. So, we do get the attempt to do a Teferi, you know, Spider-Man meme, stare at each other, pointing, but not going to be the case. Counterspell is going to do away with that, so we are done. And then now we get his shop owners coming over here and trolling me about my whiteboarded Planeswalkers, but all right, continuing to do some uptickies, set ourselves up. You see, like, Orm's Chant, we've got, like, some counter spells. Basically, the deck is supposed to land a Planeswalker like Teferi, do something like that. Like, Teferi is so good, and I want to play a deck that runs Teferi because of just how powerful it is. Maybe I'll do some adjustments to my artifact deck and run Teferi in there. So maybe I'll do some of that. Let's do some brewing with that. But gonna attempt to do Omnath again. It's gonna be met with a Brain Surge. Of course, Brain Surge feels really good in this list in particular because it's a land go list, and it feels really good in these situations. Now you're fighting against an aggro deck, and you're like, you know, under the gun. It is a much more challenging. That's where the like Orm's Chants and things like that really come in handy. Where you're like, okay, can't cast spells, you can't attack me this turn, you know, these sort of like blanket effects here, and the Brain Surge is a setup card. We draw 4 cards, put 2 on top, and the goal is to be able to you know, set up for a Terminus to kind of put a bunch of stuff on the bottom of your opponent's library here. Now, with Field of Ruins, with fetch lands, things like that, Lorien Revealed, like, there's a lot of ways to shuffle away. All right, if you ever have played Legacy, you know how great it is to activate Brainstorm. So Brain Surge does that, just a little bit more mana, and, you know, look at 1 extra card off of it there. So, but 3 mana to draw 4 cards is pretty good trade-off. Even if you have to put 2 back, it allows you to set up and kind of get rid of dead cards a little bit more there. All right, now there's the threat out, though. So it's like, how do we fight over and deal with this threat? That comes to the other, like, more single target removal, because you are going to be wanting to run, you know, you're going to want to run a bunch of stuff. And all right, Orm's Chant is going to come down. So no attacking, no casting spells. Now we still get the landfall, right? When a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can gain 4 life. If this is the first time this has been resolved, of course. If it's the second time, you could add 4 mana. If it's a third time, deal 4 damage. So lands will still be able to enter and get landfall triggers off that. Like you see the fetch land hovering over in the corner. And we're going to do no activation now. We're actually just going to get Karuga from the command zone, you know, the companion zone, if you will, and we're going to be able to add it to our hand. Basically, we would have to take the turn off anyway, so this lets us just sort of utilize our mana here. Brain Surge, again, going to get set up here, prepping and preparing here. It is tough when you're playing certain decks that are like, okay, like the Omnath deck is designed to, you know, grind out and get a bunch of advantage using things like our Omnath Locus of Creation. You see a couple other good tools that are at just the disposal of our elemental player here. But it becomes more challenging where you have things that are like, you know, dead cards that we're starting to discard, and things that aren't actually going to be helping us in this matchup here. like that. I think what was that, Dead and Gone, the deal 2 damage one. Yeah, Dead and Gone. So like that's one of those, like, okay, this is basically a dead card in this matchup. So how do we prepare ourselves in game 1 to grind it and fight it to, utilize our elementals to get us an advantage, while the Miracle player is trying to set up and prepare themselves as much as possible here with, Planeswalker control as we're at. So going to continue to bounce Omnath. We know that's going to get basically deployed again, but this is, again, just sort of delay tactics. Teferi is going to come out. And now this is a big T over here, the Hero of Dominaria there, and will allow us to kind of tuck some annoying threats. Also allows us to draw cards and untap our lands and get some extra abilities here. So we get some 4 mana available on the following turn, but we're going to do some fetching, help get a little bit more mana fixing. It's tough too when you're having to fight down someone that is trying to destroy your lands. How are you going to manage that? All right, now a lot of cards in hand. Like, again, if you already had the Omnath out, and then you can really start to do the snowball stuff the Elemental deck wants to do. Then we can be like, all right, we have a big beater out. Let's play Karuga. Let's go and set up for the kind of following turns. Cavern of Souls makes a big difference here, though. Uncounterable Omnath. Let us draw a card on the ETB. Yeah, even though you're fetching and shocking and doing a lot, like you're setting yourself up to gain a lot of life depending on how your lands work out there. But we're going to try a little T in response. We'll hit the path there. Get a basic tapped. Any other responsing? Got a lot more brain surges going on here, it looks like, again. All the brain surges here. So Teferi versus Teferi can become a bit of a problem because then neither player gets to do the counterspell stuff, right? Now, do you just did confirm? Okay, I tuck something, right? 3rd from the top. Anything, including Planeswalkers, non-land permanent. Oh, great. Okay, so let's utilize our Teferi and draw a card, and at least, be set up here that our opponent can't respond to much else that we do. But go to end step, discard that Dead and Gone again. All right. Again, this is kind of what you want. Like, this is optimal positioning for the blue-white control list, the blue-white miracle list, where you're in a grindy matchup of sort of land go, but you have your Planeswalkers kind of taking over the board state here, and there's not a lot of threats to pressure your life or pressure the Planeswalkers' lives. So, like, Narset's going to come out. Let's see if we get anything worthwhile out of it. Well, that's pretty good. And another Planeswalker, Jace, Mind Sculptor, going to get revealed. You saw there was a Terminus also in that list, but we don't need that right now. We could have gone for that and kind of prepared for future turns with the Brain Surge and stuff, but Jace going to be... Yeah, now we're going to get all 4 Planeswalkers here. And the list does run 4 Planeswalkers, different ones. These are the 4 different ones that it runs in varying numbers and degrees. I think we're at 2 across the board, except for little Teferi there. I think we're at 3 copies of 3, 2, 2, 2, maybe. Or maybe it's 2 across the board. I can't even remember now. I'd have to look at the list. It's online on the Moxfield stuff, so people can check that out there. But how will our Omnath player deal with this. They've got so much mana, and they now have uncountable for elementals. Elish Norn. Now, this is a really cool addition. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponent control to trigger as well. So you get like this nice little, oh, you're playing elementals, your solitudes and subtleties and things like that. They don't do the things you want them to. All right, one for 1 white. Leyline Binding. Now, this is a permanent that has a ETB triggered ability. Enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until Leyline Binding leaves the battlefield. So we get to eat a second trigger and eat 2 of the Planeswalkers off of it. So that's the kind of synergy you love to see, and why this deck is very, very cool because of these sort of interactions like this. All right. March of the Otherworldly Light. We can get rid of Leyline Binding if we wanted to. All right, Narset's going to go get us, go hunting. Another Jace here. An Opt we don't need. A Solitude we can't grab. So, yeah, Jace again. Since the other one's gone, we don't have to worry about the March at this point. You see we've got all, again, little T, big T, and Jace in our hand here. So it's like, yeah, that's fine. If you're spending your resources to get rid of my Planeswalkers, I'll just redeploy a second version of them. I'm not that worried. All right, Jace again coming out here. Brainstorming going to allow us. Basically, that's the other thing, too. When people are paying 4 mana to brainstorm in Modern because of Jace the Mind Sculptor lets us do that, and most often players are brainstorming as soon as they play it, I'm very happy to spend the 3 mana to cast Brain Surge and draw 4, put 2 on the top. So I don't know. If you have not played with Brain Surge yet, I highly recommend. I've started to sneak it into some of my other decks, specifically like the control style of decks. Like I've got my Jeskai list, and I'm trying out 2 of on there. Because there's times where the game goes longer or grindier, and I'm just like, I just need answers. I need something, anything to help me out, and that's one of those situations where Brain Surge is really nice. Whether or not you're running the Terminus package or not. Like, if you are doing Terminus, it is essential, and you have to run, Brain Surge. You have to run some numbers of Jace as well. Cryptic Command, we're going to try to move to combat, tap the team, and draw a card here. Now, we could have saved the Cryptic Command. This sort of lets the kind of the coast is clear, essentially, to start deploying things. And now it's basically just 1 blue mana available here. Solitude, uncounterable. Really, it's just we're trying to get some threats here. The last blue we've got, we're going to Island Cycle, though, because we were not happy with what we brainstormed away, and none of them were Terminuses. So we're basically trying to set ourselves up an Island Cycle for this basic island. All right, Terminus. So the car. All right, that was an important moment, and something. If you're going to pick up this deck, be very, very careful about how you are looking at the cards and adding them to your hand. I was very lucky that one hand held my hand and the other held the card, and they never quite touched, right? And it was just kind of like, oh, immediately reveal it. So if you're playing the deck, it is important to look at the first card you draw. Even off of Brain Surges, you could flip a Terminus if you're Brain Surging on your opponent's turn. So like, there's little nuance things with the Miracles deck that takes a little bit to get used to. If you try this out on MTGO, it's much easier because it just like triggers for you and gives you that prompt. Boom, hey, here's a miracle. You want to cast for your miracle cost? Like, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're going to play in person, if that card ever makes it to your hand, you cannot cast it for its miracle cost if you do not reveal it before then. So there is that little nuance element that comes along with it here. So we're going to see Game 2, a lot of dead cards taken out of the Omnath players list. They were saying, I've got, like, you know, these Fire and Ices, these Dead and Gones. Let's get those out of here. Let's try to see if we can streamline and improve this list a little bit here. And we're in this sort of land go. And when you see a Surveil land coming out, that all, like on turn 2 like that, that kind of gives you that, you know, moment of relief where you can go, oh, okay, you do not have a counterspell. You might have like a Spell Snare or Spell Pierce or things like that, but you don't have a counterspell outright. Or if you do, you didn't want to prioritize it, and so now I get to cast this Fable the Mirror Breaker for the price of for free. So there's this debate, and taking a little bit longer to respond to this because there is a consigned memory. And so the question that comes up is, can I consign the trigger to create a 2/2 red goblin creature token based off of the, you know, Saga stuff? I know that you can do that on the like final one, like if you're searching and doing things like that. And so we like have this conversation about, it's like, all right, can you consign this? Is this how this works? Like, it's like, well, I'm gonna make the attempt. All right, based off of, like, I know I can do it if I move it up. Right. So then so the players are confirming, yeah, if you consign a Urza Saga search, right, as the Saga ticks up, that stops it. So consigning this to make sure there's no little gobbo making treasure, doing things like that, it can be beneficial. Got our Field of Ruin here. Could have gone for the blow up there, but it's also, by not, it kind of helps to potentially reveal, like, oh, like now I could have the counter spell. We're going to pitch one land. Any others? Okay, 2 lands getting pitched off of here. Draw 2 new cards, hoping for something else. That also can give that indication of the priority of what is in the hand and how you're going to set yourself up there. So, all right, Godless Shrine. Yeah, we're going to blow up the Triome there. Try to help keep the Omnath player off certain colors, specifically red there. It does matter a little bit when you think about like the Omnath and how they're going to be setting themselves up. So utilizing the Field of Ruins are really nice. Not many decks are doing something like that, but if you're on like a 2-color deck like this, you can get away with running a couple extra basics just for these Field of Ruin. Especially if you're kind of a land go deck that the Miracle deck is, you get a little bit more flexibility in like how you can attack your opponent, like fighting their lands and stuff like that. All right, Fire and Ice. We're going to try to tap it down. We'll just respond and counter it. This also stops the draw effect here. All right, our Mirror Breaker has flipped. So here's the difference between Game 1 and Game 2 right now, is we're starting to get some creatures coming out. Risen Reef works out amazing in this elemental list because of the just like advantages that you gain from it, right? Of course, when this or another elemental enters, you get to look at the top card. If it's a land, it goes onto the battlefield tapped, and then if not, you got to put it into your hand. So I think here, so we see killing the Gauntlet Shrine. I think the play would have been to kill the fetch land. You know, fetch land had to enter tap there. I see that Hollowed Fountain, not Hollowed Fountain, the Flooded Strand over there, tapped off of the Risen Reef. I think keeping our opponent like in check mana-wise to prevent them from getting that red mana is going to be much more impactful than killing off the black source, because they have not shown or revealed any need for black mana for any spells. So even though it's listed as 5-color Omnath, just because of the mana base, it's really a 4-color list. It's not really utilizing black mana to help it out. All right, land go, still coming out for a miracle. No Planeswalkers, though, yet. All right, we're going to pay 1 and make a copy of the Risen Reef. 2 triggers. Of course, ETB trigger, and then it's the other Risen Reef sees an elemental and will be able to kind of put a Sacred Foundry on the battlefield tapped, help set ourselves up here for fixing our mana base, and we still have the fetch land. So, like, the amount of ramp that we can get off of these is huge. All right, pokes coming out here, 2 extra damage. All right, March of the Otherworldly Light. So again, we talked about the single targeted spells and abilities that the Miracle deck does have access to. This is one of those. Now we get to get rid of course, the Mirror Breaker is no longer available to continue to make the Risen Reef and get that huge advantage that way. All right, we got a big T here. Counterspell. So we're going to try to jam it. We haven't seen any counterspells yet, and being it is game number 2, we see now that Mystical Dispute was sideboarded in specifically. And so now this is the danger part. We were set up to, if Big T resolves, we can kind of, take control of the game there. We have our own counterspell. We'd have to be able to untap our mana. But now we're in this position of playing against another blue deck, and you never want to be the first to act in a control mirror, because the first person to act oftentimes is the one that is getting got, and then you're jamming your stuff into stuff, and people are countering it, and you don't get a fight over it necessarily the way you want. But now this means that Little Teferi is going to come out for the 5-color Omnath list, and a Flage to follow it up here. So this is kind of telegraphing how we're going to continue to run away with this game. Now you're no longer able to counter my stuff because you cannot cast things at instant speed, and I've got a threat coming out in the near future. So be prepared for a quicker closeout for this game than you anticipated, unless you can find answers to my Flage, unless you can find answers to my Teferi. So this is one of the ways to help fight it again, is shut off the red mana available and keep the Omnath player in check, because as soon as they get that double red, Flage can start escaping from the graveyard. All right, we've got some single targeted removal and things like that. There's Orm's Chant in here. There's a Path to Exile. There's, a lot of ways to kind of fight and delay things, though. We just need to hunt for, like, a Planeswalker or something again to try to take back control of the game. We've been on the Field of Ruin play this game. We popped all 3 of them. And Risen Reef has beaten us down. So it's between Risen Reef and Flage, we've taken 7 damage. That Risen Reef has put in work. Looks like plus and pass. No Planeswalker there. And now you're stuck with a handful of things to try to interact, but we can't interact at instant speed. So Risen Reef will trigger because another elemental entered. We get to draw extra cards. not technically drawing. So like if you're running like a Bowmasters and stuff like that, you're just looking at that top card. If it's a land, it goes to the battlefield. If not, put it to your hand. So it gets around the Bowmaster stuff. All right, Teferi continuing to uptick, prepare himself to... he's got no ultimate because he's got a static ability, but basically preparing himself to continue with the lockdown mode here. Fable the Mirror Breaker going to come out. We'll make another Gabo token. I mean, a Terminus would help out. And that'll be a Terminus hard casting. Not the play that you want to be making here. Basically tapping out to do that, but it's not a good mode. It's like, but it delays things. So maybe this is the moment to stabilize here. We'll see. Are we going to be doing a lot of discarding? How many are we discarding? 1, 2, another Flage discarded. So just one card. We'll draw off that. We're on the hunt. We're digging for another red source so we can be able to escape the Flage. Or just more mana in general, but looks like we're going to be going, hey, the coast is clear. Let's drop down another Alish Norn, Mother of Machines. Those double triggers are insane. So we know there's at least 2 Elish Norns in the list because this is the other art and not the original art that we saw in Game 1. So Path going to come down. We'll just put a stop to that. We don't need extra triggers coming out at all. Imagine double Flage triggers. Ugh. All right, Jace going to try to come out and help us out a little bit here. Yeah, it looks like Brainstorming going to get utilized so we can try to set ourselves up to the best of our ability. If there's any more Terminuses or things like that, we could try to, prepare for that. Not being able to cast stuff at instant speed does suck. Because you're like, all right, Orm's Chant, dead card. All right, Counterspell, dead card. All right, like these very specific things that the deck normally is trying to do, we cannot do. Oh, Omnath is here now, though, in hand. All right, Mirror Breaker flips does get us the ability to make a copy. We saw that do that earlier against utilizing our Risen Reef, but we do have our double red, double white finally, and are able to escape Flage, and no way to respond will kill off the Jace. Keeping the Planeswalker count in check is crucial when you're fighting against a Miracle deck, or at least a blue-white deck that utilizes the Planeswalkers like this. Planeswalker control. Ooh. Yeah, Solitude. Get rid of this one. You only gain 2 life. And you're like, why did you not get rid of Flage? Well, we have another way to fight Flage. Now, if there was a counterspell here, like the Mystical Dispute, we would just get blown out and feel bad. But because they didn't respond to the Solitude, we felt better being able to deploy both and exile both of those things. Now we have a Solitude. Now, of course, Teferi can answer that, bounce it to the hand, do things like that. But, that's risky. We have to assume that there's going to be other white cards to pitch that you could, blink it essentially, do different things like that. But all right, I wonder. I feel like Ephemerate is probably fine to run in an Omnath list, right? We don't see any of it here, but I'm just wondering. It's like, even if you're running like a 2 of for double value, even I'll get like using an Ephemerate with a Risen Reef seems fine. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't do what we want with a Flage, but like the other elementals, yeah. So Flage will escape. Do we kill off the Solitude here, or do we just go face? Looks like face is what we go for, which is even scarier. Because that just means, hey, your solitude that you've got is not going to matter because I get to attack next turn, and we're going to be popping that and, you know, going 6 to face. All right, Narset's going to come out. Can we find a path or something to help us here? Let's see. Digging 4 deep. Remember, you can't cast things at instant speed, so those Orm Chants would be useful, are not useful. And what do we got? Another Solitude, but not enough mana to cast that, so game 3 it is. Tied up 1-1 here in this best of 3, the kind of grindy match that it is. I love me a good land go match. Less wizard battle and more mind games happening. You know, depending on what decks you're playing, you might have a lot of stuff going on the stack and doing a lot of interactions, where this is a lot of, you know, decision making taking place based off of what information am I going to reveal, you know, how much am I trying to commit and push for something. I'm joking about how much life the Omnath player gained last turn. Said, I didn't even solitude my own guy. I could have. So I think this one, like, game 3 is really going to be dependent upon who can land to fairy. We saw how much of a hoser Teferi was in game 1 and game 2, that it kind of comes down to that moment of, like, you know, how well will a player be able to fight over that? Once it's out, it becomes much harder to fight. So the Omnath player has a little bit more answers. They've got the ley lines and things like that. They've got the flages they can try to shoot it with and do things, but, like, if one lands, it's tough. So now we've got, looks like we're doing some more land fights. Field of Ruin going to go and start blowing up some of the triomes here. Okay, Shocking in a Land 2 is also very telling of, like, we're not going to overcommit now that we know we're in a counterspell war where we're both staring each other down and kind of, like, arms racing against each other going, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to do anything about this? No? Okay. All right. I'll wait. It's fine. I'll just watch and see what you're doing. You're not going to do anything either? Okay, all right. We'll just land go, right? And we're in that kind of land go mode here as we set ourselves up. It's like eventually we got to commit. Ooh, Cavern of Souls is annoying. Risen Reef going to come out. So Cavern of Souls making this elemental uncounterable. Let's reveal no land. Brain Surging on the end step there. Alright, so there is a Force of Negation. There's a Mystical Dispute. Like, there's a lot of counterspells on our Omnath player's side, but not forcing the issue yet. Neither player... I mean, the Omnath player is really looking for more lands here, it feels like. You know, going second definitely impacts things. Ooh, we're going to attempt to play a Solitude now. We're going to try to fight over things. See what sort of reaction this gets on the end step here. Like, we have the Dispute. We could fight it. We could, you know, use our Leyline Binding. Like, we have 2 Leyline Bindings. Yeah, you see the kind of setup and adjustment to mana here to do this. Mystical Dispute going to get used. And now there's no white source, though, for Leyline Binding. Only 2 mana. Does that mean the coast is clear? Oh, no. We're still not ready to fight. Or just maybe we're waiting for a Teferi or something here. And the Risen Reef continues with the 1/1 beatdowns. Okay, getting extra red and white source here. Yeah, looks like we will shock that in. Debating about playing it tapped, but it's like, yeah, why are we waiting? Let's go for it. The Flage. So this is, we're going to try to close the game out a little bit here. We're going to fight over it with a counterspell. Really, it doesn't matter. Like, the goal is for it to be in the graveyard for us to escape it soon. And especially with this, like, non-turns taking place of just sort of land go. But except we're not even getting lands for the Miracle player. So, Risen Reef continues the onslaught of the 1 damage. And with so much mana available, we're feeling much more comfortable about trying to, you know, force the issue. You saw the, like, setup with the mana and then said no. Going for the March here is just like spending our resources. If you're not going to blink, I'm not going to blink, but I'm not going to let you get extra value that you want later on. So, all right, we see Cavern of Souls. Yeah, Uncounterable Omnath coming out. So yeah, so you're looking at, oh, March is probably a better target for some of these bigger, scarier elementals. Yes, but we would have gotten like 2 triggers off of the Omnath there, but we're going to go for some Brain Surging, draw 4, put 2 back on top. Got some answers to Omnath with Path to Exile and things like that. Alright, that's even more so. We just like Terminus. So yeah, the Brain Surge setup, even though you might think, okay, Terminusing for 1, is that really effective? I mean, putting Omnath on the bottom and not basically letting your opponent untap with an Omnath is bad news for you, because things like with the fetch lands and stuff like that, they can be able to run away with things. All right. Oh my gosh, another Omnath, uncounterable. So we're just gonna keep that pressure on our opponent here, and we're gonna play a fetch land. So trigger, gain 4 life. We're gonna respond to the trigger and do the path. Now, because it is a fetch land and we're responding to the trigger, we get to fetch and kind of go with that. And then a player came over and goes, oh my god, a white border Path to Exile? And it's like, yeah, isn't it great? It's one of those decks that I, like, if I had the time and energy, I would, like, whiteboard the whole thing to really troll my opponents, but I, you know, don't have the time or the energy to do that right now. Maybe one of these days, because I do have that how to whiteboard, you know, cards from years ago in our like how-to playlist on the channel. All right, we did have some basics left. Okay. All right, so we of course gained 4 life, and we get to get, you know, the red, white, green, blue in our mana pool, allowing us then to cast an Elesh Norn for essentially the price of for free. Really just 1 less mana, but we're going to fight over that and hit it with the counterspell. And then the pass after that. This allows us to kind of keep up a Mystical Dispute if we had it, or fight over things. We see the Force of Negation here. We're going to try to land a Jace the Mind Sculptor. And that's going to get hit with the Force of Negation. Let's exile that. And now we're in pass mode. Oof. Elesh Norn again coming down. Okay, so we did the check. Hey, it's not an elemental. It's not uncounterable. So that when it goes, oh, that's clear. Okay, cool. Let's try to land another Flage. All right, in response, then we're going to hit it with a pass so we don't get hit with like a machine gun of Flage triggers, because it does have that, you know, the way that Elesh Norn would look at that is basically you get to dome somebody for 6 and you gain 6. So big swing there. But we are now in turns. Games have been going on long enough. Again, you're looking at it, it was like, what? This has not been 50 minutes. It's 46 minutes as of right now, but we cut out all the sideboarding stuff. So, all right, Big T able to land. Let's get some card advantage here. 4 mana available now. Now the question is, are we playing to not die, or are we playing to win? Because those are 2 different things. Getting a, you know, that going for the draw and going for the win should always be going for the, you know, the win. And oh my gosh, a second one. Leyline Binding #1 comes out. We try to counter that trigger, and then a second one does land here. All right, we get our Hippo added to the hand. Karuga is going to come out, and we're going to play him. Finally, we've been waiting. The Dinosaur Hippo. And it says, is he uncounterable? And it says, well, he is counterable. So we hit it with the Mystical Dispute that we boarded in as well. All right, let's do some digging. Preordained going to come and help us out, hopefully, looking for something. Now, if you're thinking about how does the deck win, you know, having a ultimated to fairy makes a big difference, but also being able to beat someone down with a land or beat someone down with solitude. So it's the slow grindness, and when you're in turns, it's not very easy to close out the game. All right, let's see. Really separating our mana out here. End Cavern. Then it goes. Yeah, that's the thing about the. It's like, okay, also need to make sure I've got mana to. Yeah, there's the Omnath. Let's do some brain surging in response. Now we're responding to the cast in case we were able to find something or basically set ourselves up. We're not looking for a counterspell here because of the Cavern of Souls. That doesn't help us. So it's really just like, all right, how can we help keep the Omnath in check for the following setup here? Flage going to come down, though. So ETB, 3 damage, 3 life gain, that Helix effect. Oof, 21 to 7. But, again, the plan is to not die, and that's one way to do it. Terminus, set ourselves up, and you see the players scooping it up here because that is a 1/1/1 turn 5. You can't be able to finish out the game there, so neither player gets the victory, but both players get to see. It says, hey, what else did you have in your hand? Well, I still had a Cryptic Command, a Jace, and Otherworldly Light. So still a lot of utility and answers, you know, being able to put everything on the bottom and delay it. If another Flage came out, we can march to the Otherworldly Light it. Like, we had a lot of ways to do it. But here's some of the sideboard stuff that we were able to bring in. You get to see a little bit. I like to show this for players. You know, you get an idea. We don't show the sideboarding necessarily like in between the matches, but we get to see a little bit of like, oh, this is what the players pulled in and went for in this situation. So 2 subtleties, 2 consigns, and 2 disputes. But I love me some grinding matchups. I love me some land goes. So I hope you all enjoyed the land go that did take place for this match. But that's going to do it for us for our Monday episode. Make sure you guys are coming back on Thursday and Saturday for more Magic the Gathering action. But that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all next game.